of the date range. So I'm starting for, when I say year to date, obviously I'm meaning January 1 to current date. And then month to date will be like the previous 28, 30 days, and then week, the previous week. Overall, from year to date, we have seen some drop in the number of impressions as well as engagement, but we are seeing growth when it comes to clicks. So just kind of, and then we are seeing growth in the number of messages that we are putting out there. When it comes to the monthly numbers, impressions did drop a little bit, but we're seeing growth across the board when it comes to engagement and clicks, which is really good. And then week to date, we're seeing pretty much increases across the board this last week. And overall takeaways, like I mentioned, I'm changing the range for the year-to-date numbers just to kind of give us it's an easier way for me to look at things, and it is standard across the board, so those numbers will not, or those dates will be the same, and we'll always know kind of what we're talking about. So those numbers may look a little different for the next couple months until we get to the point where everything evens out. The month-to-date and week-to-date numbers are looking good. We're seeing an uptick in engagement, which is something that I had spoken about at the last meeting we had, something that I really wanted to focus on, so I'm really glad that we're seeing that increase. I'm going to continue working on that. And I really do expect us to start seeing an uptick in numbers as we move towards fall events, Brentwood days, things like that. One thing that I am hoping to work on is planning some more evergreen posts that can be utilized to fill in during the slow times, kind of like right now, or the dog days of summer where there's just not much going on because it's so hot outside, things like that. So I'm working on kind of building up a database of those types of posts that can just be plugged in any and every day to fill in any of those kind of bare areas.
Great. And as far as maybe in the next meeting when we have these reports, I think might be nice for us to see like just some screenshots or of most successful, so that we have some context for when we're looking at these numbers. What's driving, what seems to be driving it. Have we been doing more video, things like that. But it is good to see even though engagement seems to have kind of dropped a little bit, it seems like we are getting more clicks, which is
right.
It is good in my opinion. And you guys have any thoughts? I know, I definitely agree that as we move, I think since we've made so many changes to Brentwood Days, I think, we definitely need to be proactive at communicating a lot of those. And so I don't know what your plan is for that, if you have some thoughts, because, we're at the end of July here, right?
Yeah, so my goal is to really amp up now, but really like August forward, really amp up our marketing. I'm working on, this is not social media related, but banners for the light signs so that we can really promote the event. So I'm really planning to hit it hard with social media. We have already started posting about like the armbands, but it's also finding a balance between what Parks is already doing for Brentwood Days. So I plan to work closely with them.
It's a combination.
Right.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
I always forget that, but that's true.
Yeah. So right now, they've really started hitting it hard, posting about the armbands and things like that. So a lot of it right now is me just sharing what they're doing. But as the event gets closer and we can start breaking out the individual aspects of Brentwood Days, I'm really seeing a lot of opportunity for our social media.
And is there opportunity to do any sort of header takeovers or anything like that on the website, the city's website for Brentwood Days?
That's a good question. I can look into that.
Okay.
Should be, I would think. Any
other comments on analytics? All right. So no consent agenda on here, and so we'll move into old business, which is the communications plan audit and RFP results.
So this has been a lengthy process, but I'm pretty proud of where we kind of ended up. We received 5 bids from companies, both local and national. We had two companies in Texas, 1 company in North Carolina, and 2 local companies. My review committee consisted of various department members who I really felt like understood kind of what we were looking to do in terms of communication. Most of them have some sort of toe in the communication sector of their specific departments, things like that. So they really had a stake in the game. And so I felt like they were really great members to have on a review committee for these. So I'm really confident in the decision that we made. After reviewing all of the applications or the proposals, we came to the conclusion that the company Reftelis is the company that we will recommend that we go with. You have probably seen the full bid tabulation and all of the notes that have been made on there as to kind of why we're thinking this is the best option. I know that when we started with this process and we heard from the city of Wentzville, they went with Creative Entourage. Creative Entourage put together a really great presentation, but ultimately, Reftelis, I think we came across as just as good and for a little bit less money. So while they weren't the cheapest option, they're very middle of the road. And I would say in terms of the other 2 that were less expensive than them, we're more confident in Reftelis' ability to provide a quality product for us. Our recommendation would be to just focus on their base bid and not any of their additional options. That said, there is one additional item if we should choose to go with it. It would be an additional cost to get a logo and branding guide from them. That would be an additional cost, and
Yeah, it looks like it would be a total of 66.
yes, okay, I did put it in there. Yes, so that is just something to consider, and so I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Yep, go ahead.
Base bid, can that be bid out à la carte, or is that considered to be a sort of, those 3 elements are considered, those are inseparable, that's what we're bidding?
So I have gone back and forth with Reftelis a number of times, just about a couple of different questions, asking if we could do specific things. They've been very agreeable. And basically the last conversation I had with the representative from Reftelis is, we can do whatever you need us to do.
So I think that optional items is
Yes,
otherwise we reject
exactly.
So it wouldn't be appropriate, I guess would be the word, to pick and choose among the elements of the base bid, but want to add that logo and style guide.
Right.
In other words, to shift it slightly. In other words, I looked at what they put together in the crisis communications plan and the compliance and in the media training elements.
We are not recommending any of those 3 additional options.
Okay.
My reasoning for that is that I think our focus right now is what we would get out of the base bid.
Right.
And those 3 additional optional tasks are things that down the line, if we decide they are necessary, we can do. I don't think that it's an additional cost that we need to incur right now.
Okay. So based on the kind of the bullet points that you've got in the summaries of all the different proposals, the one that you're advocating is the $66,231.
It would be the base bid and then the
Logo and style.
logo and style guide.
Okay. Is there any way, given, I saw the timelines in their actual proposal, and I'm not exactly sure that I understood them exactly, but is there an opportunity to spread out that work over 2 fiscal years?
Yes, I have asked them that specifically, and they can work on pretty much any timeline we'd need.
Because we have what set aside for this, 25?
25.
Okay. So obviously, I'm good enough at this math. 40,000 additional dollars in the
Yes.
next year. Okay.
Yes. So I have clarified with them that an adjusted timeline is possible, and they, again, were very agreeable.
So we'd have to come up, we collectively, or the board, or some combination
Budget
there.
process. Yeah.
Yeah, come up with 40 grand for 2025. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's some interesting things about their proposal. What I do like is that they all come from this walk of life, so they get
Yeah.
communication as it relates to, they're not just a communications company that does work for brands, but they also do work for municipalities and really get the dynamics of that. So that's compelling for them. I think ultimately our goal, and initially when we first started this, a lot of the gripe that we hear is the logo and the colors and the branding and the style guide. It's inconsistent everywhere. It's, so, and I've always suggested that, you can't just go right into that and figure it out.
That's
So we kind of need to have the base bid elements that then actually creates the most comprehensive and the perfect brief for now develop a new logo or an adjustment of our branding, whether there's a new logo or not, and all of the style guide elements. It really needs to be one then the other. Having said that, I think our recommendation probably should be considering the base bid plus the logo and style guide as a how do we achieve that? Because it is a need for the city. So how do we achieve that in the most fiscally responsible way that will then create the foundation for work that we will then have to work on implementing
Right.
over the next 5 to 10 years, right? So
I'm in total agreement. I mean, we feasibly could just do the logo and style guide, but then 3-5 years down the line, we're kind of right back where we are now, So I think if it's worth doing, it's worth doing correctly. And I think that's where that base bid comes in addition to the logo and style guide. But yes, obviously we want to do what's right fiscally for the city.
Blaine, do you have any thoughts, comments?
Yeah, was there back and forth with all, excuse me, all the folks that bid on this, or did we kind of narrow it down based on the rubric and then we started to have back and forth?
Yes,
Okay.
it was basically just with Reftelis because and I will say it was pretty clear from
Yeah.
the committee who the winner was. And so that was kind of where we knew that was kind of the recommendation we were going to make. So I wanted to clarify with them if they would be able to fit the parameters that we were then asking.
Okay.
And they were. And I was able to reach out to their references, which included some of those cities that they've worked with and done similar work for, and they were all very favorable about the work that they've done for them, as well as the fact that they would work with them again.
I tried to look up Corpus Christi's when we were looking through this. They have a new website coming in September of 2024, so I'm sure that's going to be their fingerprints all over that.
Right,
But
yeah.
but it's not there yet. you
Yeah.
know, So I was hoping to look at something and say, oh, okay, this is.
I can definitely see if I can get some examples of their work to send to you.
I was going to suggest that. I think before we fully make a decision on this, I'm guessing at the board level, if we decide that we want to recommend this to go to the board, I think we should see some examples of their logo and
Yeah.
style guide
Absolutely.
design work, and make sure that it's a company that they seem incredibly capable of doing the base work.
Right.
But, if we're going to partner with somebody to
Absolutely.
do this, I'd like to not have to feel like, okay, great, now we need to go find the right
Absolutely.
party to do the style guide and logo work, right?
I will start working on pulling some examples of their work specifically with other cities and municipalities, because that's kind of the avenue that we fall in.
Two quick other questions. Could you, and this might be my brain not firing on all cylinders, on the Excel sheet, there's 2 tabs, evaluation grid, final eval.
Yes.
Which one was kind of the final, is
One-
final eval the decision-making one, or is it the other one just a condensed version?
Hold on, sorry, I didn't have that one pulled up. So the final eval is like all of our numbers added together.
Okay, so that's
So
an aggregate of, okay,
Yes, it's all of the committee's numbers added together in one sheet.
cool. And yeah, I was just, the reason why I was asking about the back and forth was the creative entourage, they don't seem to be that far
You're
off.
right,
And
they're
and
not.
they're a local company. What was that was the kind of the rationale there, the price
Yes.
component?
Yeah.
Okay.
Typically, when you do an RFP, you're going with lowest bid. You know, when you're doing an RFQ, and you all might know this, it's qualifications, and then you negotiate price. So it's a little different that this time around, I think it's the totality of what they bring to the table that allow the panel to recommend them, even though they're not the lowest bid, and in addition, they're not local. So within the code, there is provision that if there is a local company, say within the city of Brentwood, if they're not even the lowest bid, there's a 3% discount that you can give to them, but it doesn't apply to Creative Entourage, whose headquarters is in Clayton, I believe. So,
And I will say that one thing specifically about the pricing for Creative Entourage was a lot of their stuff was by hour and by person, and so we couldn't even really get a full picture of what the final cost would be because of those variables. So this price that I kind of give in the final tally is
We're bad,
likely
okay.
low.
Okay.
So that's kind of, yes, so price is essentially what knocked them out, because we know that they could do it. They did it for Wentzville.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. And then my other question was, so if the logo and branding is an add-on from this, is Raffatellis, is that how you?
Raftellus, and it
Raftellus.
actually is for all of them.
So then would there be a world where we could potentially have that, so maybe get the base package from them, figure out what we want to do on the design, and maybe have a separate, separate RFP, or do we have the flexibility to?
you can pick and
to- okay,
choose,
okay,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if we just wanted to start with the things included in the base bid
Yeah,
and then visit the logo and branding guide later,
yeah, because
that's an option.
as I think about where my head goes is you know, if we're gonna purchase those two things separately, who might be best at the logo and the branding is, there are unicorns out there, but they might not be the best at the base
Yeah.
elements too.
And I will say, something that I was a little bit shocked when we received these bids was to find out that for most of these companies, the branding guide and the logo redesign was not included in the base bid. And that may just be a fault of mine in the way that I worded the RFP. Learning experience for me. But yeah, that was something like for Creative Entourage, the design files and things like that are an additional cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. Maybe what we need to do, though, is budget. You know, when we go into the budgeting, let's budget for the necessity to do that. You know, whether it's up to 30,000 or whatever the number might be for what we think it might cost.
So do you think you want to do the base bid, so just talking, and then maybe revisit, so you would almost, well, you could negotiate and select the optional items, or you could, yeah, I think that might be a path. I don't want to say that you should reject everything and then start over, because you might find some good ones in here. So I think you have to select the base, and then the optional, then your agreement should just be for the base. And then when the city decides you want to do crisis, then you already have quotes for what you could select on the others, and then pick and choose any of the 5.
Yeah, I wonder, though, if they had additional items that were not, if you were to do those one-off to a company, maybe they'd be more
different.
expensive.
Sure,
I don't know.
you never know.
But I still would like to make sure that Raftellus has at least the competency and chops that we feel confident that if we did work through this with them and we decided, hey, as we're working through this, we decided that maybe let's add in the logo, that we'd have confidence they could do it.
For you guys, does that come from seeing their examples of their work?
I think it would be good to just see
Yeah,
some case studies,
Absolutely.
Have they done this before? What does it look like? Is it,
Similar-sized cities, perhaps,
or just, I mean, it
bigger-sized
doesn't,
cities, because bigger-sized cities definitely have more money
So-
than we
no,
are willing
agree,
to spend.
agree.
I don't know, I think you guys all, because I scanned the
Yeah.
PDF of the full RFP, and it does have case studies with examples of the logos and things that they designed. I'd be happy to pull those separately.
But the comprehensive
Right,
document is
yeah.
what they need to see.
So I can go ahead and reach out to them and ask for those full kind of specs.
Yeah, I would like to see, if they've done, branding style guides, I definitely would like to see
Okay.
that part of it, just to make sure that we're, and again, I think if we structure the recommendation right, and we go with the base bid, we're not necessarily locking ourselves into working with them on the logo and the style guide, but again, it would be nice to be certain
Absolutely.
that that's a viable option for us.
I could probably figure this out by looking at them on LinkedIn, but I would also be curious if they have in-house designers or if they contract it out to freelancers. Full transparency, and I'm hesitant to say this because if you, like when Coca-Cola comes out with a new logo, like if you ask 100 people, 50 of them are going to like it, 50 of them are probably not going to like it.
right.
I was not super fond of the logos of the cities that they did.
Okay.
That's my personal take, though, which is also why I'd be curious to know if they do freelance those out or if they have them in-house.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the tricky things, is design is subjective. I mean, people like our logo and people don't like our logo already. Like,
Yeah, so when you start to get into who specifically
Yeah.
likes it, it's a dangerous
but yeah,
game.
getting a little bit more of a clear or a more full-scale picture of what they've done for other cities to kind of build up that confidence, and
Yeah.
I totally understand.
This was great work. This was like, I will say, this was incredibly comprehensive, so thank you for
Oh,
putting all
thank
this
you.
together. I can tell this was a lot of work to dump all this in here.
I can say I've done it now.
There you go.
Okay, so just making sure that I have kind of my next steps clear. I'm going to go ahead and see what I can do about pulling together their full kind of examples of style guides they've done for past cities, so that we can get a better look at that. And then we come back together, or?
Well, I mean, I think that it's kind of up to the committee, I guess. We could entertain a motion that would forward on to the board for consideration the base bid, or having seen this and having the due diligence that the staff has done, or we can wait for another meeting and do it then after we've seen that. But I think that since we're not necessarily ready to pull the trigger on a logo and style guide cost,
Right.
I'm not sure waiting buys us a whole lot. And I think we're about to start the budget process, so I think having something concrete is a good thing sooner rather than later, I would guess.
Right,
Bola.
we have time, so we have until September for this committee, if you want to wait until the next meeting, August, and have enough time for them to do the turnaround and get Michelle the items and share it with you, and then review it at the next meeting, and then make a recommendation the first, what is that date, Kelly, September 3rd? A recommendation to the board for discussion at September 3rd. There'll be a lot of good items for discussion on that agenda, so.
Sure there will be. But I think
September 2nd.
Is it
Oh, no,
September
that's
2nd?
Labor Day. That's Labor Day,
Third.
so that's the
So
third.
Tuesday?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I think what we need to decide as a committee is whether or not, that timing works well for us and is okay, and that one, we don't feel we need to do the full budget in this calendar year, so we can spread it over two fiscal years. So I think that's kind of the questions that this committee needs to weigh is, do we agree with Ruftelis as the recommendation? Do we move forward with the base bid only, and do we either try to find money to do it all this fiscal year, or spread it into 2 fiscal years? Those are the things that are on the table side. And am I missing anything?
Oh, that's it.
Thoughts from the committee?
I think that's a fine way to proceed. The first one,
Yes.
I thought, yes,
Everything you
that was
said.
all part of the same. I thought we were talking about coming back in August and at that point deciding whether we would provide a recommendation to the full board as to the base bid for now, and decide whether that's going to be part of an add-on to include branding at this time, or maybe it won't. Send that up to the board for September.
Don't have can we ask for the bucket of money for design without having the firm selected for that? Like in terms of budgeting for next year?
Next year? Oh,
Yeah, okay.
absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so the budget process, I guess what the dates that Bola just mentioned, that would align in time for us to make any final decisions on the budget before the budget gets passed. And then we'll also have an opportunity to be then looking across all the other departments on what budget needs are and whether or not, this fits into it or not, Okay, so is that the direction?
Motion?
We need a motion
Motion
to,
for that?
Well, probably not, because
because there's
we're
no,
coming back.
it's just directing
Right.
staff to,
So before the next meeting, you'll be hearing from me in terms of, I'll be sending examples.
Awesome.
sounds good.
Thank you.
Good work, and we're getting there. I mean,
Yes.
I'm glad we're not rushing into this, we're doing it right. So, and the important part of having this, I think, is we're still down the road for, major
Yes.
things that happen in our city that we need, good foundation for this, so. Okay, great. Any other comments before we close out old business? No? Citizen comments? Anybody online? Anybody? Okay. All right, seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned.